Kia ora and hello. You're listening to our Music 101 interview podcast with me, Charlotte Ryan. Delaney Davidson is the real deal. When you talk to him, it's always straight from the heart. There's nothing pre-rehearsed. It's quality, and that's so clear in his music too. When I spoke to Delaney, he was typically candid, speaking about his new album, Out of My Head. And in fact, in this interview with him, it sparked conversation in the New Zealand music community about whether there is still a place for albums in today's streaming world, or whether we just listen to singles now. Delaney Davidson is such an interesting artist to spend time with. Enjoy. Congratulations on Out of My Head.
Thank you.
Is 10 a big, is it sort of a big number for you?
Yeah, it felt like a milestone, and I realised the album format is something we're all so used to, and I'm not sure why we're hanging on to it so hardcore. The whole idea for me of an album, I'm like, so many people aren't even thinking that way. They just release singles, they put out their work as they're making it, which seems so much more natural.
Really?
So for me, I'm like, why am I hanging on to this album concept? And is the 10th album I do the last actual album? That's something I've been thinking about in my mind. I don't mind writing, and you can always cobble together enough material to fill one. But the idea of not being limited to that in terms of costings and unit production, LPs and CDs, or how we release, all those things would be so much less to take on if you just released music as you made it.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I know, it's scary, isn't it? It's like staring into the pool before you dive in and the lights are all turned off.
But I love the concept of the album, and I feel like this new album of yours is a story, or it's a capsule.
It definitely has a pretty nice thread of feeling woven through it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's from the writing being done during the lockdown and just waking up, making a pot of coffee, sitting at the table and writing and just trying to find this sort of these thoughts and these feelings, and how it felt to me so much more thoughtful, I guess, than other albums I've done that feel more active or more action-based or more driven. This one felt like a lot about pondering and thinking, and maybe that's the 10th album as well. Maybe it's that, maybe it's the age I'm at. It feels like it's definitely a reflective time for me, turning 50 somewhere in the middle of this process as well, and starting to think about my life, who I am. Initially, I went and made what I thought was the album in Sublime Studios down in Kura with Tom and Steve, and took Joe McCallum and Mark Hughes, and we smashed out these songs, and it was like, this is all sounding great, and then came back and listened to them and thought about it and was like, this is amazing what we've done, but this is not the album I wanted to make. And then talking with Mark, we talked quite a lot, and the idea for me of the 10th album was something super luxurious. I've always wanted to make this album. You would wake up on Sunday morning and you would put this album on, and it would be like, this is the feeling, you know. Drink some coffee, slowly eat some food, just take it easy and live in this Sunday morning world. And that's from listening to, Lee Hazelwood or Chris Christopherson or some of these sort of things. So talking with Mark, we kind of came up with a new idea. And so I would, wake up, get up, walk down the hill in Littleton, get on the boat, go over the water, walk up the hill in Diamond Harbour and spend the day working with Mark and Tom. It was amazing working with Mark because he kind of lives in that world that I was wanting to create, the luscious little bit of synths, some strings here and there. Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about Mark, it's Merck, or
yeah.
Mark Perkins.
Mark Perkins, yeah.
Incredible musician.
Yeah, amazing. He did some really weird things while we were recording, like learning arpeggio sequences backwards and then playing them so that when we put those backwards, they would be forwards. And I was like, who does that? We listened to it and he's like, didn't like it, so it didn't end up being used. But just putting in that kind of time, me and Marlon talk about him as the ultimate enabler.
I like that.
He'll sort of help you just realise these dreams you've got very easily. And
I was wondering why you worked with Merck, because you've worked with so many people and you've produced albums. So I was like, what are the key components to a good producer in your eyes?
One main thing about a good producer is the fact that it's not you, because you can be an amazing producer and you can never step outside of yourself to see yourself objectively or hear your own work in a light that you've never imagined it in before. You can try, but even the fact that you can do that means it's your own world still, So I always thought you could almost go out and get any random person off the street and say, can I get your opinion on this? And they would have something you never could have, right? So with Mark, there's obviously that, but there's also, a whole vision that he brought. And I think we live in such different worlds that bringing those two worlds together was really exciting for both of us. We were both often like, whoa, and we'd end up doing these things where we'd both be playing the keyboard at the same time. He was sort of in the middle and I'm up on the higher keys, and we'd find these sort of weird parts that work together. Yeah, that was really a fun part of the recording. Marlon was quite heavily involved too, as just an outsider set of ears as well, and did a lot of the vocal coaching for me, which was so great to have someone steering that. And you just say, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Tell me if it's crap or whatever. Just make it work and treat me like an instrument. So I'll sing, you just tell me what to do. And that was a really nice stage to get to as well, after working so much together in the past and just feeling like, just seeing what Marlon's capable of in terms of production was totally awesome, And a lot of the decisions we made on the album were committee based, we called it. So there was a lot of talk and a lot of me listening and going, I've spent so long pushing things, I'm just going to not be the guy pushing it,
Be pushed.
Yeah, just allow it to happen and open up.
What is a vocal coach? Like, I feel like your vocals are so you. Do you mean that sort of Marlon challenged you to do things that you wouldn't usually do?
Yeah, he just would lead it. So he would say, sing this phrase this way, try this way. And also when you do recording, you sing a few takes through and then you go, okay, let's now focus on the line by line so we can get it really to sit.
Yeah.
Like some songs just rattle out and it's great, but other songs you really take time with each line. So when you're singing, you're not even listening for tuning anymore. You're listening for inflection, believability of how you deliver it, and you might forget to even think about if you're singing in tune or not. It's that thing, the more you focus on something, the bigger it becomes. And so these tiny things that you never would think about normally, suddenly that's all you're thinking about, and you can't hold all of them in your mind at the same time. So I've done a lot of singing, and particularly with Marlon, where I'm not even thinking about whether it's in tune or not. I'm just trying to match it to what he's doing. And it doesn't matter if it's in tune. It's just sitting somewhere in the right place.
How interesting, because I think from a fan's point of view, it just seems like, it's so carefree, so easy. You're nailing it.
Yeah, you want that too.
Yeah.
That's all part of what you're aiming for.
When we describe Delaney Davidson music, your music, the words used are folk music, psychotic punk, sometimes bluegrass. What is this album? What's the sound of this album?
I guess ballad might be a big part of it. A song written with Hayley, Heaven is Falling, is definitely a ballad. Don't Walk Away from Love, total ballad. There's a lot of those songs. There were some songs I wrote that were more me trying to focus on. I was listening to lots and lots of John Lee Hooker, so I was trying to somehow write some of the songs with his direct lyrical approach, which is just so straight. It's amazing, So some were written trying to do that sort of thing, but a lot of it was thought-based. I would sort of catch these seeds, I've called them. So I'd think about things during the day or find something in the evening. Like Don't Walk Away from Love was originally going to be Walk Away from Love. It was this great idea I had for a song, right? And then the more I thought about it, as I was trying to write it, it just didn't sit. And then when I thought, no, it should be Don't Walk Away from Love, that's when the song really started to flow. So I would catch these thoughts, I would write down these little seeds, walk away from love, whatever. And then in the morning I would sit down at the table and try and flesh out that idea. So writing songs that way felt really different to me to other songwriting approaching in the past where you're more musically driven. This was definitely concept. Each song was its own kind of thought.
I know you wrote the album in lockdown, and lots of us sort of felt these pangs of loneliness and all sorts. But I did wonder if this album was a love album or like and you don't need to tell me, but I wondered if you'd fallen in love or perhaps had I don't know, it seems enlightening.
It does have that feeling in it, and I think there was a lot of moments in the writing process where I was wondering, am I or aren't I in love? Like one song in particular, I went out, me and Anika Moa and Julia Deans and Mike Paru went out.
Trouble.
On the town in Christchurch.
Trouble.
And I got home and I was like, what's happened to me? I feel like I've fallen in love. And I was trying to write these songs and I was like, what the hell's going on? And then after a couple of days, I was like, I just needed to write these songs. I'm okay. I'm not in love. I'm still on my little tracks here, The world's not going to change. But it was something about going through those feelings, considering them. Are they real? Are they not? Is this happening to me? Is it not? Who could it be? These kind of questions. And being open to that idea. And I think that world we all experienced with the lockdown was super personal, and we could dive right into those worlds and explore them without too much interruption from outside. So it definitely has that feeling of quite a distilled world that isn't maybe subject to the crazy winds we're used to dealing in our everyday life.
I feel it is uplifting. It's not like a sad COVID album or anything.
No way. No, I think it's definitely got solace in it, and also solutions for things.
I wonder if it is to do with the age, and you've probably thought about this more, but I think as I get older, I enjoy that solace more.
I think that's something you start to enjoy, comfort and also loneliness you enjoy more. But I think definitely the feeling is a mature album. It's the feeling of a mature person. It's not, let's go out and get smashed on Friday night, and, it's definitely not that. There is a little bit of that in there, some poking its head around, but the general feeling is much more feet on the ground and looking around.
You mentioned before Hayley Westenra. A lot of people will be surprised that you co-wrote with her because we haven't heard of her.
Yeah, first and foremost me. I'm totally surprised that I co-wrote with her.
How did this come about?
Beck Runga wrote an email introducing us saying, Hayley's just moved back to Christchurch, keen to meet up with people who are sort of doing music in the scene. And I was like, why does she want to meet me? I guess people all have their own idea of who Hayley Westenra is. She wanted to meet up, and I was like, oh, cool. So we met up in Littleton, and we're chatting away in some cafe and got on really well. And I was like, let's go back to my place because I've got a piano, I've got guitars, we can write stuff. And so we went back and we were tinkering around with all these ideas, and then this song just sort of fell out of nowhere, Heaven is Falling, and all of a sudden it was just there. And it was like, what the hell, where did this come from? It was getting dark and she had to leave because she'd just got her learner's license and she couldn't drive after dark, so off she went. Yeah, I played it for a few people and it was so intense because I couldn't even get through it without crying. Like, I just couldn't even play the song properly. I played it to Tammy and I remember just like falling to bits halfway through. But then the more I played it, the more it felt like, I kind of can see how it would work in my way. Reb came and sang it with me on the album and lent a whole new amazing feeling to it. We ended up tracking the song and the piano was out of tune, and halfway through a kettle started whistling, and there's all these things going on that just kind of made it what it was. But it had such a great feeling in it. And I think that was when we kind of went, whoa, this is what this album's going to be. It's going to be like that. And that was a real moment of hearing the flavour of the album.
I love when you perform live. You often perform, I'm not even sure if it's a character or if it's you with a costume on, or when you paint your face white or you sort of put stuff, if that helps you get into a character. Will that performance style flow into this album as well?
That's something that the music always leads. You're always letting the music lead that, and you just try and follow it. And the longer you do things for, the more easy that becomes for you to just loosen up. And it hasn't felt like something that came easily. It was always me sort of up there screwing my eyes tight shut, freaking out, trying to get through the performance and off the stage before anything landed or you connected with people, but over time that's felt easier and easier. And I think the performance style, I'd like it to feel just natural. I mean, I'm not opposed to dressing up, and there's always some diabolic presentation going on, but yeah, it'll be curious to see. I mean, for the rehearsals we've been doing for the tour have felt just very easy. It's not a big palaver to pull it off. It's just really...
Who's in your band?
Oh, who's in the band? Chris O'Connor we have on drums. Heather Webb, guitarist from Christchurch. Carla Camilleri is playing keys, and then we have Black String Ensemble playing. We're having a trio from them, so 2 violins and a cello. So this will be super luscious sounding.
It's not a usual Delaney tour where you're going and performing and...
No, definitely not.
No.
It's very, very unlike me to try and reproduce an album for a tour. I think I've maybe tried it once before. Normally there's the live show and that's what it is, and then here's an album and it's the studio world. But trying to bring that studio world into this live setting is amazing to hear it and to try and do it. And obviously there's a lot of things... you need a lot of help, so huge thanks to Chamber Music New Zealand for all their support in this as well.
So you're performing at the Nelson Theatre Royal, Hawke's Bay Arts and Events Centre, the Wellington Public Trust Hall, Q Theatre in Auckland, and then the Great Hall in Christchurch.
Yeah.
You lucky Christchurch people, that venue is so magical.
Yeah, it's starting to become more and more used, which is great to hear and see and have it available.
My auntie and uncle got married there.
Really?
I think lots of weddings probably have happened there.
That's nice.
This sort of theme has been coming up a lot with local musicians recently, of the time that they spend on albums and I guess the investment into albums.
Yeah.
Do you ever sort of calculate the money or the time? Or
You can try, and you can definitely keep a budget. I was super lucky to have funding for this from NZ On Air. So there's no way this album could have been what it is without them. Of course, you end up trying to keep a tally on what's spent, but it goes way beyond that. Yeah, generally albums are frightening how much they cost to make, and you can try and keep them as low as possible, but even if you do, it's going to be somewhere between 10 and 20k with not paying studio fees or anything like that. That's just time spent on mastering, a little bit of time on mixing, and getting the album made. That's if you're doing everything for free. Albums get up into some folks, you're not going to believe it, but way up, somewhere between 60 and 100k for some albums to be made. And it's hard to say what the money goes on. It just goes on stuff: musicians, fees, accommodation, food, all the different processes in making an album: mastering, mixing, artwork design, all the stuff. Yeah, and it's hard to justify it sometimes. But yeah, talking with Tammy about this stuff, she's also, me and her are old friends, and talk about how hard it is to tour, or how hard it is to put albums out. And we always come back to this thing that it's the rewards are not in where you think they'll be. The rewards are in doing the work and in doing more work, so somehow that's kind of the payoff. It's a weird thing, but you always end up investing everything you make into the next project. It's always all or nothing, double or nothing. It feels like being at a racetrack or something, backing yourself.
Well, if you don't invest though in it, it's not going to be the product you want.
And there's been a lot of times I've made things work economically, touring or just slogging it out solo, and realised, if I'd invested more there on a band or on something, who knows what, there would have been a totally different outcome. But I'm scraping through and making it work economically, and maybe that's not to my advantage.
No, it's to our advantage though, as fans. Yeah. The media landscape, music media landscape, has changed so much over the last wee while. I feel like you were always quite alternative, like your music, you always were independent and things. But I guess the question is it harder now to get your music out because of the lack of music media?
I don't know if I think it is for me, because it always felt like I did, like you say, I'm independent. So there's a whole lot of things that I wouldn't do anyway. So for me, there's this weird thing, and this is an ongoing talk me and Pippa always have. Pippa's my right arm, by the way. We always have had this conversation about whether to do it the way it looks like you're meant to do it, or whether to go your own independent way. And just about always comes back to your own independent way, because if everything else that you rely on for the bigger picture, whatever you want to call it, falls over, if you're independent, you're still there, you're still doing your own thing, and to some degree you'll always be doing that. It comes back to that same thing with Tammy, that you're doing it for the rewards of the work. It's what you do, right? It's not based on commercialisation or returns or anything like that. So you're just going to keep doing it even if there's no one else around.
I was speaking with Delaney Davidson for Music 101 on RNZ National. Now, you must go and listen to his album now, Out of My Head. It's the album we were speaking about. But of course, he's got such a huge music catalogue, over 10 solo albums. Have fun listening and make sure you follow our Music 101 interview podcast and share it with all of your music-loving friends.